what we had heard just 3 days earlier at the city's county hospital. The pediatric specialist had delivered the sentence with a professional but cold voice. Liam, my only son, barely 2 years old, was suffering from a rare neurological disorder. Half of his body was paralyzed, and he would need lifelong therapy at an exorbitant cost. Those words had shattered my world, but the worst part wasn't the illness. It was the reaction of the man who was supposed to be my partner. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching Liam sleep soundly, his breathing calm and his face serene, oblivious to the weight that had just been placed upon him. The hood of my worn-out sweatshirt was pulled over my head, soaked with tears that hadn't stopped falling for 3 days. In the corner of the room, my husband, Sean, wasn't looking at his son. He was stuffing clothes into a large duffel bag. They weren't work shirts or uniforms. It was his favorite leather jacket, his best graphic tees, and the bottle of expensive cologne he had bought the week before. "Sean," I called out, my voice hoarse from crying. "Where are you going? You haven't said a word in 3 days." He didn't turn around. He zipped the bag shut with a harsh sound that echoed like a gunshot. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice cold, unrecognizable. "I'm leaving, Leah. I can't take it anymore." I felt a hand squeeze my heart. "Leaving? Where? We have to find money for Liam's therapy." "To hell with the doctor," he interrupted, finally turning around. His gaze cut through me like a knife. It wasn't the look of a husband. It was that of a stranger filled with rage. "I'm tired. Do you hear me? Tired since that kid was born. Our life went down the drain, and now he's paralyzed? Disabled? You want me to spend the rest of my life working just to support an invalid?" Every word was a razor blade slicing me from the inside. "He's your son," I whispered. "Your blood, your flesh. How can you call him an invalid?" Sean let out a horrible, mocking laugh. "My son? I'm not even sure he is. Maybe he's the result of you messing around. If you had slapped me, it wouldn't have hurt as much." I was left speechless, in shock. "My God, Sean, are you listening to yourself?" "I hear myself perfectly," he answered, with cruel calmness. He walked over to the small dresser where I kept our documents and the little money we had. Inside was a brown envelope with bills that amounted to about $200, the result of selling my only wedding ring and a bracelet inherited from my mother, all set aside for the down payment on Liam's therapy. The next moment, I saw his hand reach for the envelope. "No, Sean!" I screamed, trying to get between him and the dresser, with Liam still asleep behind me. "That money is for Liam's therapy. It's all he has." Sean shoved me hard. My thin, exhausted body slammed against the wall. "Get out of the way!" he spat. He stuffed the envelope into his pocket as if he were just taking a few bucks for a whim. Then he pulled the savings from a drawer. He knew I didn't have a debit card. The next day, he would empty whatever was left. "Sean, I'm begging you," I cried, crawling to his feet. "Don't touch that money. Take what's in my purse, the few pieces of jewelry I have left, but not the therapy fund. Without that therapy, Liam will never walk again. Please." He swatted me away with his hand, like someone brushing off trash stuck to their shoe. Then he did something that broke me more than any blow. He walked over to the bed where Liam slept, small and defenseless. I still held a foolish hope that seeing him would stir something, that a remnant of fatherly love would make him reconsider. He looked at him for a few seconds and muttered, "A dead weight, just a burden for the rest of his life." He didn't even touch him. He turned and dragged his duffel bag toward the door. With the last ounce of my strength, I picked up Liam, who woke up startled and began to cry. I followed Sean out onto the porch. The rain intensified, soaking my clothes. Then I saw it. A slick black sedan I had never seen before was waiting in front of the gate of the rented house. The engine was running. The lights were on. The passenger side window rolled down, and there she was, Claire, Sean's secretary from the office, the woman about whom I had dismissed my suspicions so many times. She wore bright red lipstick and a venomous smile. Sean opened the trunk, tossed his bag inside, and hurried into the driver's seat. Claire let out a shrill, triumphant laugh. Before they drove off, she stuck her head out the window. "Goodbye, Leah," she said mockingly. "Have fun taking care of your little invalid. I'm taking Sean out to enjoy life. The car sped away, kicking up dirty water from the puddles that splashed my face and my scarf. I stood there, motionless, with Liam crying at the top of his lungs in my arms, my heart turned to ice. When the sound of the engine faded into the distance, only the noise of the rain and my son's sobs remained. I collapsed onto the cold porch floor, trembling. My husband had left with another woman. He had taken all the money we had, even the money for his own son's therapy, and he had mocked us. I knew that by the next day, the bank account would be at zero. In his mind, we had ceased to exist. Perhaps he thought we would just fade away, like a forgotten candle. The first sunrise without Sean was the longest of my life. The sun came up, but its light couldn't pierce the sticky gloom of that tiny room. I hadn't slept a minute. I had spent the night on the floor, holding Liam, who ended up with a fever. His intense crying from the night had faded into exhaustion, but at dawn, he began to whimper again, a low moan that stabbed at my ears. He was hungry. I got up as best I could, my legs tingling. I went to our kitchen, which was barely a corner with a hot plate. I opened the empty refrigerator. Sean had even taken Liam's powdered formula. I checked the rice canister. Nothing. I opened my purse on the table. Not a single coin. The man I had married hadn't left us enough to eat for even one day. Panic began to tighten in my chest. I didn't care about my own stomach, but Liam needed milk, food, medicine for his fever. With a shame that burned inside me, I put on my scarf, still damp from the previous night's rain, and went out into the street with Liam in my arms. I walked to the corner deli, Mrs. Gable's, at the end of the block. "Mrs. Gable," I called in a low voice. She was arranging eggs in cartons, and when she saw me, her expression hardened. Gossip already traveled fast in the neighborhood. "What is it, Leah?" she said, looking me up and down. "You look like you haven't slept a wink." I felt tears welling up again. I looked down. "I wanted to ask if you could give me a can of formula for Liam and some fever syrup on credit. He's been running a temperature since last night." Mrs. Gable set the eggs down with a sharp thud. "Credit? And your husband?" "I saw him leave with a huge bag last night. He's gone, isn't he?" A woman shopping nearby chimed in. "Oh, don't tell me he left her. That poor creature." My face was on fire. I pulled the hood of my sweatshirt further down, trying to hide. "I'll pay you back, I swear, as soon as I have some money." Mrs. Gable huffed in annoyance, but ended up grabbing a can of powdered formula and a blister pack of children's acetaminophen. "All right, but if you don't pay me by next week, I'm telling Mr. Davis, the head of the Tenants Association." "Thank you so much," I stammered, hurrying out before I could hear more whispers. That week was hell. I lived on credit from Mrs. Gable's store, under her increasingly harsh gaze. I looked for work like crazy, but who was going to hire a woman with a paralyzed child always in her arms? On the 7th day, my nightmares came true. Someone banged hard on the door. It wasn't Sean. It was the landlord, Mr. Henderson, accompanied by Mr. Davis. "Leah," the landlord said bluntly, "you're 3 months behind on rent. Sean promised me he'd pay it all this week, but his phone is off and he's nowhere to be found. He doesn't live with you anymore, does he?" I nodded, feeling my knees go weak. "I'm so sorry, really. I just need a little more time. My son is sick, just give me 1 week." "I don't care," he cut me off. "I need the money. If you can't pay today, you have to leave the house right now." My eyes widened. "But where will I go? I have a sick child. Just 1 week." "No!" he roared. "I've lost enough already. Get out." He motioned to 2 large men he had brought with him. They entered without asking and started taking our things out. The thin mattress, the small plastic dresser, the pot, the plates, they threw it all onto the muddy street in front of the building. I could only cry, clutching Liam to my chest while the neighbors watched. Some whispered with pity, others with morbid curiosity. I felt naked and humiliated. That afternoon, officially, Liam and I were homeless. We sat next to our small pile of belongings under a sky that threatened more rain. When night fell and the air turned cold, I packed the essentials into a backpack, picked up Liam, and walked without a destination. I ended up in front of a small neighborhood church with a wide, cold portico. The small neighborhood church was our place of prayer, and at night there was always a quiet corner at its entrance. There, on the tiled floor, on some cardboard I found in the trash, we slept our first night as homeless people. The next day, I had to get up. I couldn't afford to die. Liam couldn't die. The elderly woman who took care of the small neighborhood church, Mrs. Peterson, saw me and, taking pity, agreed to let me leave Liam with her for a while. I walked to the city market, asking from stall to stall, "Is there any work? I can wash dishes, sweep, mop, iron." After dozens of rejections, the owner of a small diner, Gloria, looked me up and down and said, "I need someone to wash dishes in the back. I pay cash daily. But don't bring the child. He'll get in the way." The daily pay was next to nothing, but at the same time, it was everything I had. I accepted without thinking. Then I went back to the small neighborhood church and spoke with Mrs. Peterson. I offered her half of my daily wages if she would look after Liam from morning to evening. The old woman accepted with a tired smile, and so my new routine began. At 4:30 the morning, I would wake up, pray, and get Liam ready as best I could. At 5, I would run to the market, where a never-ending mountain of greasy dishes, leftover stew, and the smell of fish awaited me. My hands, once soft, began to fill with cracks and blisters from the soap and hot water. At 5:00 the afternoon, I would return to the small neighborhood church, pick up Liam, and we would go back to the portico to sleep on our cardboard. And still, I never forgot my goal. Liam had to get better. With the $1 I had left each day after paying Mrs. Peterson, I ate the leftover rice Gloria let me take and began to save coins, penny by penny. 2 weeks later, I had enough to try something. At the market, I had heard about a man in a distant neighborhood, a healer of muscles and nerves named Mr. Elias. He wasn't a doctor, but they said he had miraculous hands and charged very little. One afternoon, with the sun beating down, I strapped Liam to my back and walked almost 3 miles to his house, a wooden shack on the edge of a dirt road. There were many people waiting. When it was finally our turn, Mr. Elias, a thin man with strong hands, took Liam's rigid little leg, felt it, and clicked his tongue. "This is already very stiff, ma'am. The nerve hasn't moved for too long. We have to wake it up," he said in his rustic accent. Without warning, he began to manipulate Liam's leg forcefully. "Mommy!" my son screamed, a cry that froze my blood. I lunged forward. "Please, be gentler. You're hurting him." Mr. Elias looked at me sternly. "If he can't take it, he'll never walk. It has to hurt. Pain means he can still feel something. If he stopped crying, that's when you should worry." He went back to the brutal massage. Liam cried, called for me, tried to pull his leg away. I covered my mouth with the edge of my scarf so I wouldn't scream with him. Tears fell onto his hot face. In my mind, I saw Sean and Claire's laughter as they drove away in that shiny car. "Liam has to get better. Liam has to get better," I repeated to myself like a mantra. Half an hour felt like an eternity. When he finished, Liam collapsed into my arms, exhausted from crying. "3 times a week," said Mr. Elias. "Don't miss a session, ma'am. This is going to take a while." We walked back, my back broken and my heart shattered by my son's screams. That night, in a corner of the small neighborhood church's portico, when everyone was asleep, I began to imitate Mr. Elias's movements. I rubbed oil on Liam's legs, and although he cried again, I didn't stop my hands. The doctors had said my son wouldn't be able to move, but I was determined to defy that fate, even if it cost me blood and tears. 2 years passed that felt like 20. Our life changed a little, but it didn't get easy. After 6 months of working like an animal at the diner and washing and ironing clothes for neighbors who lived near the small neighborhood church, I managed to save just enough to rent a 10 by 10 foot room in a damp, narrow alley. It was a cube with thin plywood walls, a tin roof that was noisy when it rained, and a rough concrete floor. We slept on a folding mattress in the center. In one corner was a hot plate, and in another, a mountain of clothes to be ironed. But it had a door and a lock. We had a roof over our heads that didn't depend on charity. During those 2 years, my routine barely changed. At dawn, I would leave Liam with Mrs. Peterson, run to the diner, spend the day between dishes and greasy water, then pick up other people's clothes to wash and iron at night. 3 times a week, I would carry Liam, and we would walk for miles to Mr. Elias's house. His screams had gradually subsided. At 4 years old, my son was already a warrior. When the therapist twisted his stiff legs, Liam would close his eyes, clench his jaw, and squeeze my hand, but he rarely cried. The effort began to pay off. Slowly, his legs, once thin as dry branches, began to take shape. He learned to sit up without support. If I tickled the soles of his feet with a feather, his toes would wiggle a little. His arms and hands became strong. He used them to drag himself across the concrete floor of our room like a little soldier. But it wasn't just his body. Liam was observant, sharp, too smart for his age. Since his physical world was limited, he spent hours looking out the half-open door. He watched me iron, watched the neighborhood kids run in the rain. He followed the cats sleeping on the tin roofs with his eyes. One day, I found him drawing with his finger in the dust on the floor. They weren't childish scribbles. He had outlined a curled-up cat with astonishingly correct proportions and silhouettes of running children, even capturing their movement. I understood then that if his body was trapped, his mind couldn't be as well. He needed stimulation, a bigger window to the world. I started saving again, not for therapy this time, but for something different, a tool. For 6 months, I cut back even more on my own food. I ate only rice with broth from the diner, no meat, no vegetables. Every coin I had left over from the market, I hid under the mattress. After that time, I managed to gather the equivalent of about $50. I went to the second-hand electronics market and, after haggling, bought an old tablet. The screen was cracked in one corner and the body was scratched, but the seller swore it still worked. That night, I gave it to Liam. His eyes, usually calm, filled with light. "Is it for me?" he asked in disbelief. "Yes, my love. It's for you to learn, to see new things. But promise me you won't spend all day just playing games," I joked. I was wrong. I should have let him play more. I installed a few free apps, one for drawing, some simple educational games. In a week, he had mastered everything. Within 2, he was bored. "Mom," he said one afternoon, "this game is wrong. The monster should be able to jump higher." I smiled wearily. "Well, you make a better one," I replied jokingly, but he took it seriously. "How do you make a game?" I fell silent. I was a dishwasher with a high school education. I had no idea how to answer, but I saw the determination in his little eyes. That night, after Liam fell asleep, I didn't lie down on the mattress. I went to the small neighborhood church, not to rest, but to connect to the free Wi-Fi that reached weekly to the portico. Shivering from the cold, I opened Liam's tablet and searched for how to make games for kids. I found a visual programming app, one where you drag and drop blocks of commands instead of writing code. I downloaded it. From the next day on, Liam found his universe. Sitting on the mattress, his twisted legs in front of him, his strong fingers flew across the cracked screen, dragging blocks, testing combinations, getting frustrated, and trying again. He wasn't just drawing anymore. He was making his drawings move, respond to commands. He would mutter to himself as he worked, "No, not like that. If it hits this, it should go back to the start, not die." I watched him out of the corner of my eye while I ironed. I understood almost nothing, but I saw a fierce concentration. There was a fire in his eyes. And then came the second great coincidence, which in reality was a miracle. One afternoon of therapy, Liam's legs were especially stiff. Mr. Elias explained that it was a phase where the muscles resisted before giving in. Liam suffered more than usual. That night, back in our room, I was massaging his legs with oil while he, lying on his back, continued to tinker with his game. "Come on, my sweet boy, fight the pain," I whispered, seeing his contorted face. "You can do it. Your legs can do it." "It's hard, Mom," he complained, red with frustration. I didn't know if he was talking about his legs or the game that wasn't working. "Liam can do it," I insisted. "I know it. Try again." He squeezed his eyes shut, screamed with rage, and concentrated with all his might. In that exact second, two things happened at once. On the tablet screen, the square character he had created finally jumped over the obstacle. Liam had found the exact combination of blocks, and under my hands, my son's right leg gave a kick. It wasn't a big movement, just a stiff, but conscious, kick. He had moved it. I froze, my hands trembling. Liam opened his eyes and looked at the screen, then at his leg. "Mom," he whispered. My leg moved. I couldn't hold back anymore. I dropped the tablet onto the mattress and hugged him with all my strength. I cried, but they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of victory. "You can do it, Liam. You're going to walk, my love." "Thank you, God." That night, I felt two miracles. His legs were responding, and at the same time, I understood that inside his head was a diamond in the rough. What happened that night changed everything. The air in our little room, once heavy, began to smell of hope. We were no longer just two survivors, we were a team planning to win. I realized I had two gigantic missions: to heal Liam's body and to feed his mind. The following week, I told Mr. Elias about the kick. He smiled for the first time. "That's a very good sign, Leah. The nerves have connected. From now on, it won't just be about forcing, it will be about training." The therapies intensified. He taught me how to build a simple walker out of PVC pipes. Every day in the alley's hallway, I would hold Liam from behind, forcing him to place the soles of his feet on the ground. He would fall, get up, fall again. His knees were covered in bruises and scabs. Between sweat, tears, and nervous laughter, his future was being forged. When, at 5 years old, he began to give up, he would complain, "It hurts, Mom. I'm tired." "Just a little more," I would say, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Imagine you're the hero of a game who falls 100 times but gets up 101 times. That will be the best game you ever make. And he, taking a deep breath, would nod. "Okay, Mom. One more time." While his body hardened, his mind soared. The old tablet became too small for him. His fingers were too fast for the slow screen. He needed a keyboard, a computer. Where was I going to get money for a laptop that cost hundreds of dollars? I made a crazy decision. I sold my last piece of jewelry, a small gold earring, the only physical memory of my mother I had managed to hide from Sean. I got about $60 for it. With that, I bought an old laptop from a used electronics store, thick, yellowed, with an almost bulging screen, but the keyboard worked. When I placed it in front of Liam, it was as if I had handed him a treasure. "Thank you, Mom," he said, unable to take his eyes off it. That's when my second serious job began, apprentice manager. I knew I could no longer guide Liam with just intuition. I needed to understand the world I was pushing him into. Every night, when he collapsed from exhaustion after therapy and I finished the last shirt in the ironing pile, instead of going to bed, I would go to the small neighborhood church with the old laptop and connect to the free Wi-Fi on the portico. My hands, rough from detergent and the heat of the iron, I began to learn to type. I read everything I could. What were game assets, the little drawings and resources game creators use to build their worlds? What was pixel art, a type of drawing made with small squares, like old mosaic-style games? How did the online platforms where indie developers, people who make games on their own, without a big company behind them, buy and sell these resources work? What did it mean to be a freelancer working on individual projects from home for different clients? What was a portfolio, a kind of folder or album where you show your best work? What was PayPal, a service that allows you to send and receive money online, even from other countries? I learned basic English words: buy, sell, client, payment, project. I copied them into a worn-out notebook. In my head, I was no longer just a desperate mother. I was the CEO of a company with a single employee, my son. During the day, when Liam didn't have therapy, he would sit in front of the laptop. I bought him a drawing pad and some cheap colored pencils. "Draw on paper first," I told him. "Think carefully about the character, then transfer it to the computer." And he drew nonstop. Knights, dragons, monsters, magic trees, castles. His style was simple, made of little squares, what I later learned was called pixel art, but full of life and personality. "This is the Fire Knight," he would explain. "His sword shoots flames, but water weakens him." "That's brilliant," I'd reply. Now try drawing him standing still, walking, and attacking. We need several poses. I was repeating instructions I had read in beginner tutorials. Liam dedicated himself to it with patience. Frame by frame, he assembled his animations in a free program I installed for him. 2 months later, we had our first portfolio. A package of Fire Knight characters with 10 animations each, 5 cave monsters, and a set of chests, treasures, and coins. Now came the hardest part: selling it. That night, on the small neighborhood church's portico, I created an account on a small website for indie game developers. I chose the brand name Leah's Studio. I uploaded Liam's files and stared at the screen, my heart in my throat. How much should I charge? I checked what others were charging. Many packages cost $10 or $20. I was scared. We were selling from a damp little room. I felt like an imposter in the digital world. In the end, I set the lowest price on the entire site, $3. When I hit publish, I felt like I was throwing a bottle into the ocean. A day passed. Nothing. 2 days. Silence. A week. Emptiness. Liam started to get restless. "Why isn't anyone buying, Mom?" "Because they haven't seen us yet," I said, trying to hide my own disappointment. "Let's make another package, even better. Maybe this is just the beginning." But at night, when I was alone with the bluish glow of the laptop, I doubted. What if no one wanted my son's drawings? What if it was all a dream? 2 weeks after uploading the package, one early morning while I was ironing a dress at 2 a.m., my old cell phone vibrated. It wasn't a call or a text message, it was an email notification. I turned off the iron and with trembling hands opened the message. It was from the sales platform. "Congratulations, Leah's Studio. You have received a payment of $3 for the item Pixel Fire Knight Asset Pack." I read the line over and over. I felt my heart stop. I sank to the floor. Tears fell onto the hot fabric, making a small hissing sound. I cried silently, not because of the amount, it was barely enough for 2 days' worth of milk, but because of what it meant. It was proof that what Liam did had value beyond our home, that someone somewhere far away had decided to pay for his talent. The email said the purchase came from Canada. I jumped up, ran to the mattress, and shook Liam. "Liam, wake up!" He opened his eyes halfway, confused. "What's wrong, Mom? Is there a fire?" "We sold something, son. We sold it." I put the phone screen in front of him. "Look, someone bought your drawings for $3. Liam rubbed his eyes, focused, and slowly smiled the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. "Really, Mom?" "Really, my love." We hugged each other, laughing and crying at the same time, in the middle of that tiny room filled with clothes to be ironed. The next day, I cashed out the $3 and made 2 decisions. I didn't buy new clothes or treat myself to anything. First, I took Liam to Mr. Elias and paid for a double therapy session. Then, I went to the pharmacy and bought the best children's vitamin supplement I could find and an expensive cream for the bruises on his knees. That night, as I rubbed the cream on his legs, he looked at me very seriously. "Mom," he said, "tomorrow I want to make robots, cooler robots, so we can sell them for $5. I smiled. "Make all the robots you want, my love. Every dollar we make, we're going to save. One day, instead of me carrying you, you're going to buy yourself some robot legs." A laugh escaped me. My son's dream was even bigger than mine. From that night on, I knew we would make it. Every dollar that came from his mind and his hands, we reinvested in his health. We were building our own empire, step by step, from nothing. 6 years is a lot of days. It's 72 months, more than 2,000 sunrises. For me, it was 2,000 battles fought from dawn till dusk. That first sale was just the spark. That same night, after Liam had fallen back asleep, I returned to the laptop. I used some of the money left from selling the earring to buy a small data plan for my phone. I could no longer depend on the spotty Wi-Fi from the small neighborhood church. I spent the entire night studying other platforms. I saw that some artists sold packages for $20, $50, even $100. I honestly compared their work to Liam's and knew that my son had nothing to be ashamed of. His designs were even cleaner and more original. I realized I had underestimated us, that I had entered the digital world with the mentality of a beggar. The next day, I told Liam, "Son, I need a favor. Can you make me another set, this time with a robot theme? Good and bad robots, with weapons and battle backgrounds." He, having just finished his walking exercises with the walker and sweating, got excited. "Of course, Mom. I already have ideas." For a week, he worked like a professional. He sketched in his notebook, crossed things out, redrew, and then transferred it to the computer. He didn't just make 2 robots. He ended up with 5 villain robots, 2 heroes, 10 types of weapons, and 5 different backgrounds. He called it the Cyber Warfare Pack. That night, I uploaded it to the platform. My fingers trembled again as I typed in the price. This time, I didn't put $3. I gathered my courage and typed $50. $50 seemed insane to me. I closed the laptop and tried to sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, the email alert sounded again. "You have received a payment of $50. I sat down, my legs weak. It was real. But the real surprise came an hour later. Another email, this time from the buyer. It wasn't an anonymous customer. It was signed with a name and title. Marcus Jimenez, art director at Starlight Games. The message was in English. I read it slowly, word by word, using an online dictionary to help. "Dear Leah's Studio, I just purchased your Cyber Warfare Pack. I must say, it's the best pixel art I've seen this year. I'm surprised you're selling it so cheap. My team is developing a new game, and we need 10 additional robot characters in this same style. Would you accept a contract job? We can pay you $1,000 for the 10 characters. $1,000. I counted the zeros again. $1,000. I had never seen that much money together, not even in my dreams. Not even Sean with his office salary had ever earned that in one go. I replied as best I could. "Yes, we can. Thank you." It took me half an hour to write that sentence without any mistakes. A week later, the money arrived in my PayPal account. The first thing I did wasn't move or buy new clothes. I took Liam to the best private hospital in the city. He was seen by a prestigious orthopedic surgeon and rehabilitation specialist, a kind, middle-aged man who examined my son's legs carefully and reviewed the x-rays. "What that neighborhood therapist did for him is impressive," he commented. "He kept his muscles alive. But now it's time for the next phase. The nerves have reconnected. We need to retrain the brain to send the correct signals. He needs professional physical therapy 3 times a week, good nutrition, and this." He showed us a picture of a device, an orthosis, a kind of custom-made brace to support his ankles and feet as he learned to walk. It was extremely expensive, but this time, I didn't hesitate. "We'll take it, doctor. When do we start?" The second expense was our arsenal. I went to a computer store and bought a new, powerful laptop with a clear screen and a graphics tablet so Liam could draw directly on the computer. Our room was still tiny, with the old hot plate in one corner and the pile of ironing in another, but now, next to the bed, there was tech equipment worth more than I had earned in years of hard work. Liam became a tireless worker. In the mornings, he went to physical therapy and learned to put weight on his feet with the braces. He fell, he cried, but he got back up. In the afternoons, he sat at his new workstation. He drew robots, backgrounds, characters. His hands flew over the graphics tablet. We finished the 10 robot commission in 2 weeks. Marcus was thrilled. He sent us an extra $200 bonus and a new contract, this time for $3,000. The name Leah's Studio started to get known in the indie developer community. From Canada, we started getting clients from Germany, Japan, Spain. No one knew that behind that name was a 6-year-old boy and his mother, who still took in laundry on the side. They only knew that we delivered beautiful work on time. I changed, too. I stopped being the lady who washes dishes and, without realizing it, became a project manager. I learned to negotiate, to keep accounts, to set deadlines, to answer emails in English without trembling. 6 months later, our income stabilized. One day, after doing the accounts, I went to talk to Gloria, the owner of the diner. "Gloria," I said, "today is my last day washing dishes." "You're leaving?" she asked, surprised. "Where to?" I smiled. "To my own company." I also returned the last of the ironing to my clients, explaining that I couldn't continue. They thought I had gone crazy. A week later, Liam and I left the damp room in the alley. I rented a modest little house in a quiet subdivision with 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a small yard. It was our new castle. Later, as the business grew even more, I formally registered the company as Liam's Star Studios, LLC. I rented a small office space and hired 2 young designers to help Liam. At 8 years old, my son was already the creative director of his own studio. In parallel, his rehabilitation continued. Every month, his steps became steadier, his legs stronger. And then, the day came. Exactly 6 years after Sean had walked out the door of our old rented house for the last time, I was standing on the deck of our current home. It was no longer a temporary dwelling. It was a large, 2-story house in a residential area with landscaped gardens and a small swimming pool. I had paid for it in cash. I looked out at the yard. There was Liam, playing soccer not on a screen, but running, jumping, kicking a ball at a goal. Every time his foot struck the ball, my heart echoed the sound. There was no trace of the little boy who used to drag his legs. He was tall for his age, handsome, bright, and self-assured. "Mom!" he shouted from the lawn. "The client from Japan emailed. They loved the new levels. They already sent the bonus." I smiled. "Thank God, son. Finish your game, take a shower, and we'll have lunch. This afternoon, we'll look at the new project from Germany." "Deal," he replied and ran inside the house. I stayed there for a moment in silence, letting the soft breeze caress my face. The scarf I wore was no longer cheap fabric but light silk. My hands were no longer cracked. Our life was finally full. We had a home, work, health, and love. And on that very day, the demon from the past came knocking at our door. The doorbell rang. I went into the living room and looked at the intercom screen. The black and white image showed a couple standing at the gate, a man and a woman. Both looked thinner, tired, aged, but I recognized them instantly. I would recognize their faces even in hell. Sean and Claire. I had waited 6 years for this moment. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a sense of pending justice. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. The world around me seemed to go still. The echo of Liam's laughter from the bathroom faded from my ears. All I could hear was the beating of my own heart. In the image, Sean looked nervous, smoothing down a jacket that was a little too big for him, a sign he had lost weight. His hair was thinning at the front. Claire, beside him, had her arms crossed over her chest. Heavy makeup tried to hide the fact that her former glow had faded. Her flashy red dress looked cheap against the understated elegance of my home. They were the perfect picture of what I had always imagined, 2 defeated people. Sean raised his hand to ring the bell again. Before he could, I pressed the audio button. "Who are you looking for?" I asked. My own voice sounded strange, calm, and hard. They flinched at the sound of it. "Leah," Sean said, hesitating. "It's me, Sean." Claire stared at me through the screen, sizing me up, even though she could only see a small image of me. I remained silent for a few seconds, letting them stew in uncertainty. "What can I do for you?" We just wanted to say hello," he improvised. "It's been a long time. Someone told us you lived here. Can we come in for a moment, say hello?" In his mouth, that word sounded dirtier than any insult. "Liam," I called toward the inside of the house in a soft tone. "Sweetheart, stay in your room for a little while. Play on the computer. I have visitors." "Okay, Mom," he answered from upstairs. I didn't want him to see them. Not yet. This was for me. I pressed the button to open the gate. The mechanism hummed to life, and the iron bars slid aside. On the monitor, I saw their surprised faces. They hadn't expected an automatic gate or that kind of entrance. They were convinced I was living here as the kept woman of some rich husband. I turned off the screen. I wasn't interested in watching them cross the garden, in letting them savor the short walk from the ground of their ruin to the door of my justice. I went to the front door, a tall, solid piece of wood. I stood behind it, took a deep breath. I was no longer the Leah who cried on a porch in the rain. I was the CEO of a company, the mother of a genius. I heard their footsteps on the marble of the entryway, then the doorbell again. I turned the key and pulled the door wide open. We stood face to face, 6 years compressed in the space between us. Sean looked at me with a clenched jaw, his eyes filled with shock, resentment, and above all, greed. Claire scanned me from head to toe, my silk scarf, my elegant blouse, my long skirt. I saw in her eyes the exact moment she accepted that, in every sense, she had lost. "Leah," Sean began, forcing a stiff smile. "You look very different." "Time changes everything, Sean," I replied dryly. "Come in." I turned without waiting for them and led them to the living room. I did it on purpose, so they could see the high ceilings, the leather sofa, the large painting on the wall that cost more than everything they had ever stolen from me. They walked like thieves in a palace, gawking at everything with gluttony. "I can't believe this," Claire whispered. "This house, your husband must be a millionaire." Sean perched uncomfortably on the edge of the sofa. Claire settled beside him. I sat across from them, upright, my hands resting calmly on my knees. "After 6 years, what brings you here? You don't seem like you've come just to say hello." Sean cleared his throat, trying to reclaim some of the charm he once had. He put on a mask of false guilt. "Leah, I know I messed up. I'm sorry. You're sorry." I tilted my head. "Are you sorry you left me? Or are you sorry you left before I was living like this?" He didn't expect such coldness. He shifted uncomfortably. "It's not that. Things didn't go well for us. The business went bankrupt. Claire has been sick. You're broke," I finished, stating it as a fact. Claire flushed with anger. "What are you implying? We're fine." "Oh, really? Then why is the sedan you escaped in 6 years ago parked outside with a repossession notice stuck to the window?" They were stunned. I had seen it on the camera. I knew they were lying. Their facade crumbled. "We need help," Sean admitted in a low voice. "We heard you were doing well. You got married again, right? Your husband must be a great man." He looked at me with resentment. "I'm sure he doesn't know about your past," Claire added venomously, "or that you have a son. You know, a son like that." And there it was, their plan laid bare. "So," I said calmly, "you've come to blackmail my supposed rich husband." "It's not blackmail," Sean hurried to say. "Let's call it compensation. We've kept quiet for 6 years. We can keep quiet if you help us out a little." Claire twisted her mouth into a crooked smile. "It must be nothing for you, a little cash, and we'll disappear. That way, your husband will never know he married a woman with a problem child." "With a what child?" I asked, locking my eyes on them. An uncomfortable silence fell. They knew we had reached the heart of the matter. They thought I was ashamed of Liam, that I was hiding him. Sean smiled maliciously, believing he had the upper hand. "Come on, Leah," he said. "Your husband won't want to be saddled with something like that. I bet he doesn't know anything about the boy." He laughed again with that same sound that had broken me 6 years ago. "How is he, by the way? The invalid?" Sean's laughter filled my living room, identical to the one he let out in front of the car on that rainy afternoon. Claire mimicked him, shrilly. "I bet you have him locked up in some room or in a charity home. I bet you told your husband the kid died, didn't you?" Easier than explaining that little problem. Every phrase was gasoline on the fire they themselves had lit. I was just holding the match, waiting for the right moment. "So you come to my house, after what you did, to accuse me, to insult my son, and to ask me for money," I summarized without raising my voice. "How much?" $500,000, Claire blurted out as if it were nothing. I remembered the stolen 200 for the Rappiand almost laughed. 500,000, I repeated, a small smile playing on my lips. As soon as they saw the smile, their confidence began to waver. This was not the frightened reaction they expected. "What are you laughing at?" Claire snapped. "That you haven't changed. You're still just as foolish, greedy, and blind." "Watch your mouth," Sean shouted, getting to his feet. "We came in peace. Don't be rude." "Where are you hiding him, huh? Where's Liam? In which room?" Claire also stood up, looking toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. "I'm going to see him with my own eyes. So move. I'll take a picture and send it to your husband. I want him to see what kind of woman he's got." She started to walk around the sofa. "Stop," I said in a single word. I didn't shout, but the authority in my tone stopped her in her tracks. For a few seconds, only the ticking of the clock could be heard. Do you really want to see him? I asked, rising slowly and adjusting my scarf. After this, there's no going back. At the mention of his name, Sean puffed up again with false confidence. Of course, we do, he mocked. We want to see if he's still crawling around or if he's rotted away by now. A small chuckle escaped him. Those words sealed their fate. All right, I said, you're going to see him. But he's not in any back room. I pointed to the spiral staircase that led to the second floor. He's upstairs, in his studio. Studio? Claire snorted. What does he do? Count pills or beg for money online? I didn't answer. I started to walk up. They followed me, their heavy steps echoing on the marble. In the second-floor hallway, I walked to the double doors at the end, made of dark wood. I placed my hand on the handle. Are you sure you want this? I asked one last time. What you see in here will change your lives. Sean lost his patience. Just open it, Leah. I opened the doors. They entered, almost pushing past me, the mockery prepared on their lips instantly freezing. It wasn't a sick room, it was a futuristic command center. Half of one wall was glass, offering a panoramic view of the city. The afternoon sun flooded the space. The other walls were covered with shelves filled with books, framed awards, and collectors' figures. In the center, a huge L-shaped desk held 3 glowing ultra-widescreen monitors. One showed lines of code, another 3D graphics, and the third a messaging program. Beneath them, a transparent computer tower glowed with blue lights. Several graphics tablets, mechanical keyboards, and a professional microphone completed the setup. What is all this? Claire whispered, taking a step back. My rich husband's study, I replied calmly. Sean said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the ergonomic chair in front of the monitors. Sitting in it, with his back to us, was a boy. He was wearing large headphones, and his fingers were flying across the keyboard. Liam? I called softly. He didn't hear me, absorbed in his work. Liam? I repeated, a little louder. He stopped. He took off his headphones. 1 second, Mom, he said. I'm just finishing a render. Then he spun the chair around. This was the moment I had waited 6 years for. What Sean and Claire saw was not a skinny baby in a bed, but an 8-year-old boy with an intelligent, clean face, neatly combed hair, and a steady gaze. He was healthy, upright, with no trace of the illness they had used as an excuse to abandon him. He looked at us with curiosity and gave a polite smile. Sorry, Mom, he said. I didn't know we had company. The silence that followed was so thick you could almost touch it. The color drained from Sean's face. His legs trembled. He had to lean against the doorframe for support. Sweat trickled down his temple. Claire covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with horror and disbelief. No, it can't be, she stammered. Who is he? You don't recognize him? I asked, looking at them both. Sean's gaze was fixed on Liam's legs. Liam stood up from the chair. He stood up, walked around the desk toward me. He didn't limp. He didn't stumble. He stood beside me and took my hand. Mom, he murmured, not understanding. Why is that man shouting? And why is that lady crying? The blow was perfect. Liam? Sean said his name as if it were a question. Liam, can walk? He doesn't just walk, I answered coldly. He runs, he jumps, and he does tricks with the soccer ball in the pool. Look at my son. Son, this is Sean and Claire. Then I turned my gaze back to them. Their faces were a portrait of suffering and shock. And you, I said, pausing. This is Liam, my son. As if fate wanted to hammer the point home, a female voice sounded from one of the monitors in English. Render complete. Project Tokyo is ready for upload. The computer was announcing that the work for clients in Japan was finished processing and ready to be sent. Liam turned toward the screen. Finally, he exclaimed. Mom, I have to send this to the clients in Japan right now. They've been waiting. He went back to his chair, sat down naturally, typed a few commands, and uploaded the file. Clients in Japan. That phrase was the final nail in their coffin. I didn't remarry, I said slowly. I don't need a rich husband to support me. All of this, I gestured around the room. This house, the cars, the company I run, it comes from here. From his head, from his hands. The invalid you mocked, the burden you abandoned. Sean broke down, not out of love, but from the brutal realization of what he had thrown away. He hadn't just left a son, he had left a diamond mine. Claire collapsed to the floor, sobbing loudly, not with remorse, but with rage. "No, it can't be," she wailed. Sean, on the other hand, knelt before Liam like a ruined gambler who finds a lost winning ticket. He looked at him with desperation. "Son," he whispered. "Son, Daddy's here." Liam took a step back, hiding behind me, clutching my blouse tightly. He wasn't scared, he was disgusted. "Children have a radar for the truth. Don't touch him," I said in a low but sharp voice. Sean froze, his hand in midair. "Stay away from my son." "He is my son," he shouted desperately. "My blood. I'm his father." "Liam, don't listen to your mother. She's filled your head with lies." "I made a mistake, but I can fix it. I'll buy you anything you want. We'll travel the world. We'll be a family again." He looked at Claire with contempt. "You, get out. We're finished." Claire's eyes widened. "What? Are you crazy, Sean? Get lost!" he yelled, without looking at her. For him, Claire had become a one-way ticket to misery. Liam was the ticket to paradise. He crawled closer, trying to grab my son's hand. "Liam, please." The voice that broke the air was Liam's. He let go of my clothes and walked to stand in front of Sean. He looked at him with a calmness that hurt. "Liam," Sean repeated, seeing a glimmer of hope. "Son, you are not my father," Liam interrupted him. His voice was clear, far more mature than his 8 years. The last spark in Sean's eyes died. "What? What did you say?" "My mother told me my father died a long time ago," Liam replied. "He died the day he stole my therapy money and left me for dead." "Who told you that?" Sean snapped, furious. "She's lying." "I was on the stairs when you arrived," Liam continued, his voice steady. "I heard you talking. I heard how you laughed at me. You asked how the invalid was doing. You said you bet I was still dragging myself on the floor, that maybe I had already rotted away in a room." Every word from my son's mouth was a blow to Sean's chest. Sean tried to touch him. "Don't touch me," Liam shouted, taking another step back. "My father would never call me an invalid. My father would never laugh at me. My father," he turned to me and pointed, "is my mom. She carried me to therapy. She lost sleep teaching me things. She broke her hands working for me. You are nobody. You're just a bad man who came to my house to hurt us." Sean was breathless. I placed my hand on Liam's shoulder. "Did you hear him, Sean?" I said, turning to him and then to Claire. "You came here with a plan. You thought I was married, that I was hiding Liam as if he were a source of shame. You wanted to extort $500,000 from a man who doesn't exist. But you were wrong. There is no new husband. There is only Liam and me. And you were also wrong about your enemy. The child you called a burden is the greatest blessing of my life. You two are the real disgrace." I walked to the window and looked down at the gate, where their old car was still parked with the repossession notice on it. "I know you've run out of money," I continued. "What you stole 6 years ago was wasted on parties, clothes, bad investments, garbage. I know your business failed, Sean. I know Claire had to sell her fake handbags one by one to eat. You didn't come here to say hello, or even to blackmail. You came to beg." That was the truth. Sean literally crawled across the floor and grabbed the hem of my skirt. "Leah, please," he sobbed. "I know. I'm scum. But give me a job. Anything. I can be your driver, your gardener. Don't throw me out. Let me be near Liam. I want to try to make things right." "Make things right?" I cut him off. "You can't fix something you destroyed on purpose." I pulled my skirt from his grasp and walked to the desk where an intercom phone was. I dialed the security post at the entrance. "Yes, Mrs. Leah," one of the guards answered. "Come up to the main studio, please. You have 2 intruders to escort off the premises. Is there a problem?" "Yes," I replied loudly, looking at Sean and Claire. "2 beggars have snuck into my house. They are bothering my son and me. I want them removed from my property right now." Claire exploded. "Beggars? You call us beggars? You arrogant!" She stood up, Enraged, "Who do you think you are? You're just a common tramp. You must have used witchcraft. You probably sold your soul to get here. You'll see." She lunged at me but didn't make it. 2 burly security guards were already at the door. One grabbed her arms and pulled them behind her back. The other helped Sean to his feet. "This way, sir," he said, firm but professional. "No! Let go of me!" Claire shrieked. "Sean, do something! He's your son! It's our money!" Sean looked at her. Then he looked at Liam. In his eyes, he understood that the game was over. "Leah," he murmured one last time, "I'm begging you, don't do this. You did this to yourselves," I replied. "Guards, please." Watching them being dragged out of that studio was one of the most liberating scenes of my life. Claire screamed, cursed, and spat insults. Sean didn't resist. He was completely broken. As he passed Liam, he still whispered, "Son." Liam looked away. Liam and I followed them to the second-floor balcony. From there, we watched as the guards escorted them through the living room, past the furniture they had coveted so much, and pushed them toward the front door. Claire continued to shriek threats of divine punishment. Sean just kept repeating Liam's name, his voice growing fainter. The door opened. The echo of their voices filled the porch, and then fell silent as the guards left them on the street and closed it again. I went to a window and pulled the curtain back slightly. Outside, on the clean asphalt of the neighborhood, Sean fell to his knees. Claire turned on him, crazed. A sharp slap sounded, so loud we heard it from upstairs. "This is all your fault," she screamed at him. "You promised me a life of luxury. You told me if I left with you, we'd have everything." She pointed a trembling finger at our house. "That should be for me. I should be the lady of the house here. But you threw the kid away. You threw away the gold mine because you're lazy." "Claire, stop," he groaned. "It's over. It's over with you." She spat. She spat in his face and, without looking back, walked toward the security booth, probably to call a cab or a rideshare. She left him there, alone, in front of his son's house, without money or dignity. I let the curtain fall back into place. The show was over. All that remained was the soft hum of the computers in Liam's studio. I knelt in front of my son, took his shoulders, and looked him in the eyes. "Liam, are you okay, my love? Forgive me for putting you through that." He was serious for a few seconds, and then he smiled. And that smile erased the last shadows remaining in my heart. He raised his little hand and wiped away a tear I hadn't even felt fall. "I'm okay, Mom. They're bad people. I'm not afraid of them," he said. "The important thing is that I have you." He hugged me tightly. I held him close, breathing in his scent, feeling his strong, living body. He was my son, my warrior, my treasure. We stayed like that for a long time, until he was the one who pulled away first, with the same quickness with which his mind changed subjects. "Mom," he said suddenly, serious again, "I haven't told you about my new game idea yet. It came to me right before they rang the bell. It's about a warrior queen who has to protect her little prince from some shadow monsters. Do you like it?" I let out a clean laugh, the kind I hadn't laughed in years. "I love it, sweetheart," I replied, stroking his hair. "Come on, tell me all about it." We sat together on the studio sofa, and Liam began to talk about levels, spells, and game mechanics while I listened happily. For a moment, I glanced toward the closed front door. 6 years ago, someone had walked through it, taking all my money and leaving me with only a burden. Today, that same person had been expelled from my life forever. He had taken my possessions and fled, thinking he was freeing himself from a weight. He never understood that a burden cared for with love becomes a strength. And that strength, Liam's and mine, had become the greatest regret of his life. And now, before you close this video, I want to ask you something from the heart. Take a moment to breathe deeply and think. Have you ever been told you couldn't do it, that you were a burden, that you would never amount to anything? Have you had to find strength where there was none left for someone you love? If this story of Leah and Liam moved something inside you, I invite you to share it in the comments. Tell us if you know a mother, a father, a child who has had to fight against a tough prognosis. Sometimes, reading someone else's experience gives us the strength to keep going. If this story made you reflect, if it moved you, if at any point you felt a lump in your throat or a spark of hope, don't leave without hitting that like button. It may seem like a small gesture, but it helps so much in getting these kinds of stories to more people who might need to hear today that not all is lost, that a burden can become the greatest blessing of life. And please, if you're one of those who stay until the very end, I truly invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to share stories of struggle, pain, love, and second chances here. Stories that are not just heard, but felt. Subscribe, leave your comment, share this video with someone who is going through